On the night before my wedding to the crown prince, I discovered him in a secret embrace with my half-sister behind the imperial gardens. His voice was tender as he whispered to her, "You carry my child, my Ling. My firstborn. I will ensure our son inherits the throne. You are the one I truly wish to make my crown princess. I will protect you and raise you to become the most honored woman in the Eastern Palace." The crown prince had devised a scheme to push me into the Lotus Pond, arranging for a commoner to rescue me from the water. Once my reputation was ruined by being alone with another man, I would no longer be suitable as crown princess, giving him the perfect excuse to request the empress to exchange me for my half-sister. What a clever plan. But if that was his desire, I would help him achieve it, though not in the way he expected. Just before falling into the water, I deliberately collided with General Wei Chen, the kingdom's greatest military hero, entangling my robes in his armor as we both tumbled into the Lotus Pond together. After the brave general pulled me from the water, I knelt before the empress with tears streaming down my face. "Your Majesty, this unworthy daughter has been compromised by being rescued by the general. I am no longer fit to serve as crown princess. I humbly beg you to dissolve my engagement to the crown prince. But let me tell you how this all began. When the crown prince and my half-sister Mai Ling were embracing each other behind the decorative rocks, they had no idea I was listening from the shadows nearby. The crown prince's voice carried a hint of regret as he spoke. "My heart has always belonged to you. If not for my mother's insistence, I would never have agreed to marry your older sister. She may be the legitimate daughter of a prestigious family, but she is cold and formal, nothing like you, Mai Ling. You understand me." My half-sister leaned against him, her voice sweet and helpless. "Your Highness, knowing that you care for me and our unborn child, I fear nothing. Even if I could only be a lowly servant sweeping the floors of the Eastern Palace, I would accept it gladly." The crown prince tightened his embrace, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Do not worry. I will protect you and elevate you to the highest position in the Eastern Palace." Hidden behind the rocks, I clenched my teeth, remembering my father's warnings that Crown Prince Zhaofeng was not a good match. The empress had arranged our engagement only to secure his position as heir, binding our family's influence to support his claim to the throne. After our betrothal, the crown prince had used my father's reputation as the Grand Chancellor to gain support from numerous scholars and officials. I never imagined he would be so ungrateful, entangling himself with my half-sister just days before our wedding. If word of this scandal spread, it would bring tremendous shame to the Lin family. Even worse, his wicked plan to make my half-sister the crown princess required destroying my reputation first. In this world, a woman's virtue is her most precious possession. Despite knowing me since childhood, he was willing to casually destroy my life for his own desires. With these thoughts swirling in my mind, I quietly withdrew and made my way toward the Lotus Pond. My maid Yuna spoke indignantly beside me. "Miss, how can the crown prince be so cruel? We must inform the master immediately." I replied calmly, "Do not worry. Your mistress has her own plans. If the crown prince and my half-sister truly love each other, I shall grant them their wish." The empress was hosting a flower viewing banquet that day, and noble ladies strolled through the imperial gardens accompanied by their maids and guards. As I emerged from behind the rocks, I noticed a tall figure standing alone by the Lotus Pond. I paused, recognizing him immediately. It was General Wei Chen, famous throughout the kingdom for his military achievements and unmatched bravery. Though young, he had won countless battles defending our borders. The crown prince had made several attempts to recruit the general to his faction, but Wei Chen had remained determinedly neutral, serving only the emperor. I observed from the corner of my eye that several figures lurked in the shadows nearby. It was Liu Kang, the illegitimate son of the Duke of Nanping, accompanied by a servant. From their position, they could see me clearly but could not see General Wei Chen standing by the water's edge. A slight smile crossed my lips as I began walking toward the general. But before I could reach him, I was suddenly struck from behind by a rushing servant. I cried out as I fell forward, my outer robe catching on the general's armor. Caught off guard, he lost his balance and we both plunged into the cold water together. Yuna shrieked from the shore, "Someone help! Our mistress has fallen into the pond." Her cry alarmed everyone nearby, including the crown prince and my half-sister who had been hiding behind the rocks. Before the palace guards could arrive, General Wei Chen had already pulled me to the shallow edge. Taking advantage of the moment before others arrived, Yuna quickly wrapped me in her thick cloak. Mai Ling appeared beside the crown prince, her face showing exaggerated shock at my drenched appearance. "Elder sister, how did you fall into the water? And with a man beside you. What will you do now?" She pointed at the bewildered Liu Kang, who stood nearby thinking he had been the one to rescue me. "Everyone has seen him pull you from the water. Your reputation is destroyed. How can you possibly marry the crown prince now?" She turned her tearful gaze to the crown prince. "Your Highness, surely my sister simply stumbled by accident. She must be terrified. Otherwise, why would she cling so desperately to a strange man?" Hearing her words and seeing my soaked state, the crown prince's face darkened with fury. "Lin Shuyi, how could you be so careless as to fall into the water with a man? You are betrothed to be the crown princess. How can you lose your virtue and still become my wife?" The empress arrived just in time to hear this and snapped, "Be silent." The noble ladies who had heard Mai Ling's comments began whispering among themselves. Heavens, Lady Lin was rescued by a man. What will become of her? Indeed, with the wedding only days away, she was to be crown princess. How can she show her face after being seen in such a compromising position with another man? If the crown prince refuses to marry her now that she has been with another man, isn't her life completely ruined? The crowd had not clearly seen who rescued me from the water, but with Mai Ling's pointed words, everyone assumed it was Liu Kang who had jumped in to save me. I knelt before the empress, my expression resolute despite my pale face. "Your Majesty, I accidentally fell into the water and was fortunately rescued by a kind person. However, I acknowledge that my reputation has been compromised. I am no longer worthy to serve as crown princess. I humbly beg your Majesty to dissolve my engagement to the crown prince." The empress was momentarily speechless. Seeing that I had indeed emerged from the water with my virtue questioned, she frowned deeply, clearly troubled by the situation. The crown prince interjected quickly. "Mother, the crown princess will be the future mother of the nation. Her reputation must be absolutely spotless. Miss Lin is well educated in propriety and would not wish to bring shame to the Eastern Palace. Perhaps it would be best to honor her request and dissolve the engagement." He continued smoothly, "Since she has suffered such a frightening ordeal, your Majesty might consider bestowing some gifts upon her as consolation. This way, people will only speak of your benevolence and not focus on the scandal." Each of his words carefully implied that my virtue was lost. The empress, appearing helpless, responded, "Shuyi, you understand how vicious public gossip can be. It is commendable that you understand propriety. Very well. The engagement between the crown prince and the Lin family shall be dissolved, and we shall seek another suitable crown princess." I bowed deeply. "Thank you for your grace, your Majesty." As I knelt there, a small smile tugged at the corners of my lips. Regardless of what others might say, I had finally freed myself from the crown prince's engagement. From this moment forward, I would be free to live the life I chose. But my smile had barely formed when the crown prince spoke again. "Mother, since Liu Kang has saved Miss Lin's life and they have shared this fateful encounter, perhaps we should grant them the honor of marriage. This would preserve Miss Lin's reputation and fulfill a destined union." I firmly rejected this suggestion. "Your Highness, I will not marry Liu Kang." My half-sister urged gently, her voice dripping with false concern. "Elder sister, your reputation is already damaged. Marrying Liu Kang would be the best outcome for you. You must not be stubborn. Who else would dare marry a woman who has been seen alone with another man?" I raised my eyes to meet hers directly. "Who says the person who saved me was Liu Kang? By the time you arrived with the crown prince, I had already been pulled from the water. You did not witness who rescued me, yet you insist it was Liu Kang. Why is that?" I continued, my voice growing stronger. "Or did you perhaps already know I would fall into the pond? Did you know that Liu Kang would be there to rescue me?" As my words hung in the air, the gazes of everyone present shifted toward Mai Ling and the crown prince, suspicion evident in their eyes. One noble lady murmured, "That's true. We arrived before Miss Lin, Yet we did not clearly see who pulled her from the water. How can the concubine's daughter be so certain it was Liu Kang? Another whispered, could it be that she had a hand in arranging this whole incident? Such speculation was dangerous. The rivalry between legitimate daughters and concubines' daughters was well known throughout noble families, and Mai Ling was certainly not innocent in these games. The crown prince's face turned pale. Nonsense. Mai Ling is only concerned about you. When we arrived, Liu Kang was standing beside you dripping wet. What more proof do you need? I let out a cold laugh, rising to confront Liu Kang directly. Tell me, Liu Kang, were you truly the one who rescued me from the water? Liu Kang stammered nervously. Yes, it was indeed I who saved the young lady. Yuna spat with contempt. What a grandiose lie. Master Liu, my mistress was not saved by you at all. You claim to have jumped into the water, yet your clothes are completely dry. Tell me, how exactly did you rescue my lady? Do you possess some magical ability that allows you to emerge from water without getting wet? In truth, the onlookers were not completely blind to the oddities of the situation. They simply had not wished to offend the crown prince by pointing them out. But Liu Kang stood before them impeccably dressed and bone dry. He clearly could not have been in the water. I demanded sharply, are you so brazen as to lie before Her Majesty the Empress? Mai Ling stepped forward quickly. Elder sister, perhaps Master Liu took the opportunity to change his clothes after rescuing you. I understand you are heartbroken at losing the position of crown princess, but we must not treat our benefactor so poorly. If he did not save you, then who did? Where is this mysterious rescuer? Yuna retorted, who else could it be? As the legitimate daughter of the Lin family, how can you speak such unfounded accusations? If father hears of this, you will be punished to kneel before the ancestral hall for spreading false rumors. I regarded my half-sister coldly. You scheme against your own sister and spread malicious gossip. Return home and accept your punishment. Truly, being raised by a concubine has filled your mind with nothing but cunning plots. The crown prince moved to shield Mai Ling protectively. Aside from Liu Kang, no one else will marry you now. I will have mother arrange a marriage for you, salvaging what dignity remains. How long do you intend to act so willfully? You must understand you will never become crown princess. If Liu Kang did not save you, then who was it? A deep voice rang out from the crowd. It was I who rescued her. General Wei Chen stepped forward, accompanied by an elderly physician who was still damp from the water. The physician spoke up immediately. It is true. General Wei pulled Miss Lin from the Lotus Pond. Liu Kang is truly shameless, daring to impersonate her rescuer. Liu Kang's face flushed bright red with embarrassment as he retreated, unable to meet anyone's eyes. General Wei Chen knelt beside me before the Empress. Your Majesty, it was my carelessness that led to Miss Lin's disgrace when we fell into the water together. I humbly beseech your Majesty to grant a union between myself and Miss Lin. The general's unexpected proposal caused a collective gasp among the noble ladies. Their gazes toward me transformed from pity to open envy. General Wei Chen was one of the most eligible men in the entire kingdom. He was the emperor's most favored general, renowned for his military achievements, and he maintained a reputation of absolute integrity with no concubines in his household. Ever since his victorious return to the capital, matchmakers had been flooding his residence with proposals. Yet he had shown no interest in any of them. Now, because of our shared accident in the water, he was personally requesting the Empress's approval for marriage. I had just lost my engagement to the Crown Prince, and here was the kingdom's most celebrated general asking to marry me. The noble women's eyes glittered with barely concealed jealousy. Given the circumstances, and with the general personally requesting the marriage, the Empress had little choice but to nod in approval. Very well. I shall grant your union and select an auspicious date for your wedding. General Wei Chen helped me to my feet with careful respect. Miss Lin, I apologize. It was not my intention to leave you alone by the water earlier. Autumn has arrived and the water is cold. I feared you might catch a chill, so I went to fetch a physician to check your health. The elderly physician chuckled. I can confirm this is true. When the general came to find me, he was in such a hurry he nearly pulled these old bones apart dragging me along. I smiled and nodded gratefully. I am deeply thankful for the general's life-saving assistance. My gaze shifted to see Liu Kang attempting to slink away quietly, and I called out to stop him. Liu Kang, I wish to ask you something. Who instructed you to impersonate my rescuer? I continued, my voice carrying clearly across the garden. When I fell into the water, it was not an accident. Someone deliberately pushed me from behind. Had it not been for the general's rescue, I can only imagine that I would now be betrothed to you. After all, as a woman rejected by the crown prince and saved by a stranger, I would have had no choice but to marry you, correct? General Wei Chen glared at Liu Kang with barely restrained fury. Speak the truth. Now. Liu Kang fell to his knees with a heavy thud, trembling violently. General, Miss Lin, I truly did not mean for this to happen. I was left with no choice. He looked up desperately at the crown prince, pleading, Your Highness, please save me. The crown prince waved his sleeve dismissively, his face cold. What does this matter have to do with me? Mai Ling, sensing danger, spoke up with a hint of calculated innocence in her voice. Liu Kang has always admired my elder sister. Could it be that he acted on his own foolish impulse out of misguided affection? I stepped forward swiftly and delivered a sharp slap across her face, cutting off her words. Mai Ling, this slap serves as a warning from your elder sister to watch your tongue carefully, lest you invite disaster upon yourself. I know this matter involves you, though I lack definitive proof at this moment. However, your earlier certainty that it was Liu Kang who rescued me reveals your involvement. You knew because you helped plan it. The crown prince shoved me aside roughly and pulled Mai Ling into his embrace, his voice laced with anger. Lin Shuyi, how dare you strike the woman who will be crown princess? A collective gasp swept through the gathered nobles. Crown princess? Surely not. The crown prince intends to choose the concubine's daughter over the legitimate daughter. She is merely born of a concubine. How can she become crown princess? The empress's face turned ashen with rage. Crown prince? What nonsense are you speaking? The crown prince gritted his teeth and knelt before the empress with Mai Ling beside him. Mother, my heart belongs to Mai Ling. I humbly beg you to grant your blessing for our marriage. The empress, finally piecing together all the events of the day, pointed at the crown prince with a shaking finger. You would forsake the legitimate daughter of the Grand Chancellor's family for an unknown concubine's daughter? Have you lost your mind completely? As the heir to the throne, how can you act so recklessly based on mere personal desire? If your father the emperor knew of this, he would be profoundly disappointed in you. She continued with rising anger. You have just dissolved your engagement to the eldest daughter of the Lin family. I will absolutely not consent to your marriage with a concubine's daughter. That would bring disgrace upon the entire royal family. If you persist in this madness, I will have this troublesome woman dealt with permanently. Mai Ling, pale and trembling, suddenly fainted in the crown prince's arms with perfect theatrical timing. I called out with feigned concern, quickly, someone summon a physician for my sister. She must not come to harm. Lately she has appeared so pale and has been complaining of dizziness and nausea. Could it be she suffers from some grave illness? The physician who had accompanied General Wei Chen approached to examine her pulse. Suddenly his expression changed dramatically. Miss Mai Ling is with child. I covered my mouth with my hand, stepping backward with exaggerated shock. No, it cannot be. How could she possibly be carrying a child? Who is the father of this illegitimate baby? The crown prince leaped to his feet, his voice thunderous. How dare you speak so recklessly? The child within Mai Ling is of royal blood. At that moment, everyone fell into stunned silence. Only I struggled to contain my inner satisfaction. How delightful that their secret had been exposed by their own careless actions. The empress, trembling with fury, exclaimed, Zhao Feng, you are the crown prince of this kingdom. You are not yet married. How could you engage in such shameful behavior? Until today, your betrothed was still Shu Yi. How dare you entangle yourself with her half-sister while engaged to her? I turned my glare upon the crown prince, my eyes brimming with genuine anger now. So that is the truth. I wondered why someone would suddenly push me into the pond to ruin my reputation. It was all your highness's scheme to make way for my Ling. If you held affection for my sister, why not declare it openly and honorably? Why must you destroy my reputation to achieve your selfish goals? I continued, my voice rising. Both of you are unwed, yet you have pledged your hearts and bodies to one another, leaving me to bear the consequences and public shame. My Ling stirred and opened her eyes. Upon hearing my accusations, she burst into tears. Elder sister, I beg for your forgiveness. I had no choice. Father has always favored you, and mother's heart has only ever belonged to you. It is all because you are the legitimate daughter while I am merely a concubine's child. It was I who arranged for you to be pushed into the water. Do not blame the crown prince. Blame only my Ling. He did everything for my sake. She continued through her tears. From childhood until now, I have never dared to compete with my sister for anything. Yet this one time, dear sister, I truly have feelings for His Highness the Crown Prince. I wish to claim this happiness for myself, even if I can never be crown princess but only a lowly secondary consort. I do not mind my status. All I desire is to remain by his side. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Even if His Highness cannot marry me, simply knowing of his affection is enough to fill my heart with joy. I would be content to leave the capital with this child and never return, if that is what must be. The crown prince embraced her tightly, declaring dramatically, "Fool, I will never allow you to leave." The two of them performed this heart-wrenching scene before all the gathered nobles, playing the tragic lovers to perfection. General Wei Chen observed from the side with a cold sneer. Your Highness, regardless of your private entanglement with Miss Mai Ling, you cannot escape responsibility for arranging the incident that caused my betrothed to fall into the water. She is the woman you were engaged to marry. You knew full well that if she were rescued by another man, the rumors would destroy her reputation. He continued, his voice hard as steel. A woman's honor is of the utmost importance in our society. Were you trying to drive her to her death? If you cannot provide a satisfactory explanation for Miss Lin, I will take this matter directly to His Majesty the Emperor and demand proper justice. The Crown Prince's face darkened as he glared fiercely at General Wei Chen, who stood completely unfazed, meeting his gaze directly. The Empress commanded sharply, "Apologize to Miss Lin. Now." The Crown Prince gritted his teeth and lowered his head slightly. "Shu Yi, I was wrong. I apologize." Then his voice took on a magnanimous tone that made my skin crawl. "However, if you truly wish to enter the Eastern Palace, I can still grant you the position of secondary consort. I will not hold your intimacy with General Wei Chen against you. Will that suffice?" I recoiled in disgust, stepping backward. "No need, Your Highness. Her Majesty has already graciously arranged my marriage to General Wei Chen. You need not concern yourself with my affairs." I paused, then added, "I am unwell from my ordeal in the cold water. I must take my leave now." With that, I turned and departed from the imperial gardens with Yun leaving the palace without a single backward glance. Upon returning home, my parents were already aware of the events that had transpired in the palace. Their faces were dark with fury. My mother shattered a porcelain teacup against the floor, exclaiming, "What a shameless wretch! How dare she steal her elder sister's marriage when the wedding is mere days away?" She continued, her voice shaking with rage. "Mai Ling has shamelessly entangled herself with the crown prince. Someone bring concubine Hua to me immediately and confine her to the ancestral hall. That second daughter is a complete disgrace. She was raised to be so shameless under her mother's influence. How can any of the daughters of the Lin family find suitable marriages or show their faces in respectable society now?" My mother wept bitterly, embracing me. "My poor daughter, how have you encountered such heartless, treacherous people?" I dismissed all the servants, ensuring complete privacy, then quietly revealed to my parents what had truly transpired. I overheard the Crown Prince and Mai Ling's conversation behind the rocks. I deliberately arranged my fall into the water to escape the engagement. It merely happened by fortunate chance that General Wei Chen was standing by the pond, which inadvertently involved him in my plan. My mother gasped in horror, her hand flying to her chest. "Child, if the general had not been by the water at that exact moment, how would you have escaped this disaster?" I smiled calmly. "Mother, have you forgotten? I lived for several years at grandfather's estate in the south by the river. I am quite skilled at swimming. Even if Liu Kang had jumped in to rescue me as they planned, I would have swum away from him long before he could reach me. I would have saved myself. I continued, however. The Crown Prince clearly intended to manipulate and use father's position and influence without any genuine respect for our family. Thus, I seized the opportunity to nullify the engagement completely and sever all ties with the Crown Prince's faction. My father pondered this carefully, stroking his beard. The Crown Prince is incompetent and foolish. He will never successfully secure his position as heir. Our family cannot afford to be bound to his failing ambitions, especially since the Emperor has grown increasingly dissatisfied with his behavior and judgment. We must distance ourselves before his downfall brings us down as well. I rose to my feet, meeting my father's eyes. The Crown Prince and Mai Ling are already deeply entangled. Their union seems practically inevitable now. My father and I exchanged a knowing glance, speaking in unison, unless Lin Mai Ling is no longer a member of the Lin family. That very night, under the Crown Prince's protective escort, Mai Ling returned home. He gently assisted her through the entrance gate, but the moment they crossed the threshold into the main courtyard, my father's voice thundered through the night air. Lin Mai Ling, kneel. The Crown Prince was taken aback and quickly interjected, Chancellor Lin, Mai Ling is carrying a child. She cannot kneel. My father looked at the Crown Prince with cold eyes. Has His Majesty the Emperor issued a decree blessing your marriage to this girl? The Crown Prince averted his gaze, knowing full well that both the Emperor and Empress were furious about this scandal. It was impossible for them to grant permission for him to marry a concubine's daughter, especially after the public disgrace. My father continued, his voice like iron. Since the Crown Prince lacks an imperial decree of marriage, Mai Ling remains my daughter and subject to my authority as head of this household. I must now deal with family matters according to our clan rules, and I ask the Crown Prince to refrain from interfering. He turned his stern gaze upon my half-sister. Mai Ling, do you understand your mistakes? With tear-filled eyes, Mai Ling replied timidly, Father, I know I was wrong. For the sake of the Crown Prince, I beg you to forgive me this once. My father's face remained stern. Forgive you? Do you understand how many family rules you have violated? First, you were fully aware of the Crown Prince's engagement to your elder sister, yet you deliberately entangled yourself with him despite the imminent wedding date. Second, as a noble woman carefully raised in this household, you have committed the terrible disgrace of losing your virtue before marriage. Third, you resorted to underhanded schemes to achieve your selfish goals, even attempting to destroy your own sister's reputation and push her toward a dishonorable fate. He paused, letting his words sink in. Each of these offenses alone would be enough to bring profound shame upon our family name. I have decided to send you to our ancestral estate, where you shall remain confined in the family temple to reflect upon and atone for your sins. Mai Ling began crying, crawling forward on her knees. Please, father, I am your own daughter. What is wrong with wanting a good marriage? I love the Crown Prince and he loves me. The Crown Prince stepped forward angrily. Mai Ling is my woman, carrying my child. How dare you treat her this way? My father stood tall, staring down the Crown Prince without flinching. As long as she remains my daughter, she is subject to my authority as her father and head of this clan. If I chose to end her life with a cup of poison wine to preserve my family's honor, that would be within my rights as her father. The Crown Prince's expression hardened dangerously. What if she is no longer a member of the Lin family? My father replied coldly, unless she voluntarily renounces her place in our family registry and ancestral tablets, she remains completely under my control. For the sake of the Lin family's reputation, she must terminate this pregnancy and spend the next 3 years seeking penance in our family temple. At that moment, concubine Hua rushed into the courtyard, having escaped from the servants assigned to guard her. Her hair was disheveled as she threw herself at the Crown Prince's feet. Your Highness, I beg you to save Mai Ling. Take her away from here. My lord will surely kill her to protect the eldest daughter's reputation and the family name. She collapsed into a sobbing heap beside Mai Ling. Please, Your Highness, have mercy. Mai Ling gritted her teeth and looked up at my father with sudden determination. If you cannot accept me as I am, then I will renounce my place in the family. I will no longer be a daughter of the Lin clan. She turned to the crown prince, her eyes desperate. Your Highness, you will treat me well in the future, won't you? The crown prince helped her to her feet, his voice gentle. Rest assured, I will never let you down. I promise to protect you and our child. My father's voice boomed across the courtyard. My Ling, have you truly thought this through? The Emperor and Empress have not given their consent to your union. If you leave with him tonight, you will have no official name or status. You will be nothing more than an unnamed concubine. Would you rather betray your family and lose your rightful identity than remain here? Mai Ling lifted her chin, her eyes filled with stubborn determination. Yes. Even without an official name or status, I will follow His Highness. I believe he will eventually provide me with legitimate standing as his wife. My father slammed his hand down on the wooden table with a thunderous crack. Very well. I will summon the clan elders tomorrow morning to formally expel you from the family registry. From that day forward, you shall no longer be a daughter of the Lin family. You will have no claim to our name, our protection, or our ancestral heritage. The following morning, my father gathered all the clan elders and convened a full family assembly. He officially removed Lin Mai Ling's name from our family registry and ancestral records. Meanwhile, the crown prince had arranged for an unmarked carriage to wait outside the gates. Mai Ling, carrying only a small bundle of personal belongings, left with him without ceremony. This shocking news spread through the capital like wildfire within hours. The Empress, already infuriated by the entire situation, smashed another priceless teacup in her rage. Has the crown prince completely lost his mind? For the sake of a mere concubine's daughter with no family backing, he has orchestrated the downfall and alienation of the Grand Chancellor's legitimate daughter. Now that the Chancellor has officially expelled this girl from the family, the crown prince remains completely oblivious to the political disaster he has created. And he dares to bring this nameless woman into the Eastern Palace? She continued through gritted teeth, send word immediately. Proclaim that this woman shall be designated as the lowest-ranking concubine in the Eastern Palace. Grant her no honors, no privileges, no official recognition. Let us see what further chaos she can create from such a position. A mere concubine's bastard child. The Eastern Palace has no shortage of children and heirs. I soon received the official imperial decree announcing my marriage to General Wei Chen. Almost overnight, I became the most envied and sought-after noble woman in the entire capital. Ladies and matrons from prominent families flocked to our residence to pay their respects and offer congratulations, hoping to curry favor and establish connections. To formalize the union properly, General Wei Chen approached the Duke of Dinghua and his wife to serve as his elder representatives in the betrothal negotiations. Among the many valuable betrothal gifts he presented was a pair of live wild geese that he had personally hunted, which was considered a tremendous honor. The two families enjoyed harmonious discussions, and they swiftly agreed upon a wedding date 3 months hence. During the elaborate engagement banquet that followed, the noble ladies gathered in small groups, eagerly discussing the latest dramatic events unfolding in the capital. Lady Song's third daughter leaned forward conspiratorially and asked, "Are you all aware of what transpired in the Eastern Palace just yesterday? It was quite the spectacular scene, absolutely riveting." One of the other ladies, knowing that Lady Song's family had connections to several palace servants, pressed for details. "What spectacle? Tell us everything." Lady Song's eyes widened with excitement. "You mean you haven't heard? It turns out His Highness the Crown Prince was previously married to another woman years ago," she continued, lowering her voice dramatically. "Apparently, the prince wished to demonstrate his deep affection for that former concubine's daughter, so he took her to the most luxurious jewelry shops in the capital to purchase expensive ornaments and precious gifts. However, on their journey back to the Eastern Palace, a common woman suddenly blocked the path of the royal carriage. Her eyes were filled with tears as she cried out desperately, 'Zhao Lang, it has been so difficult for me to finally find you.'" The gathered ladies gasped at the audacity of addressing the crown prince so informally and intimately in public. Lady Song continued eagerly, "When the crown prince recognized this woman, he appeared visibly shocked. He immediately dismounted from the carriage to assist her, asking, 'Yunyang? What brings you here to the capital?' The woman named Yun Yang was cradling a small child, approximately 2 years old, in her arms. She replied through her tears, "I had not intended to seek you out, but after you left Jiangnan, I discovered I was carrying your child. After giving birth to little Rui, he has been plagued by illness. Only now, at 2 years of age, can he finally speak and call for someone. I could no longer bear that he lacks a father's love and care, and I had no money for his medical treatments. I had no choice but to come to the capital to find my husband. Only upon arriving did I learn that you are actually the crown prince." The small child, upon seeing the prince, rushed forward crying, "Father, father." That former concubine's daughter who was in the carriage with him stepped down and scolded harshly, "Your Highness, who are these people to call you father?" The ladies listening were completely enthralled by this scandal. Lady Song continued, "The crown prince was stammering, at a complete loss for words. Then Yun Yang fell to her knees before that concubine's daughter, pleading, 'Noble lady, I once participated in a wedding ceremony with the prince in Jiangnan. I only learned today that he is the crown prince. I do not dare to seek the position of principal wife. I merely wish to serve quietly by his side. For the sake of our innocent child, I beg you to grant us a small place to stay.' But that temperamental woman shouted back, 'Who knows if this child is even legitimate? The true royal heir is the one I carry in my womb. Guards, remove this woman and her bastard child immediately.' The crown prince stepped between them, protecting Yun Yang. He said, 'Do not be disrespectful to them. She is my legitimate wife, and this is my legitimate son. Years ago when I traveled through Jiangnan, I was captivated by Yun Yang's musical talents and refinement. I did indeed promise her a lifetime together, and we were properly wed according to local customs. Now she seeks only formal recognition of her status. Is that truly too much to ask? Little Rui bears an unmistakable resemblance to me. He is undoubtedly my own flesh and blood. You must not treat them with such contempt.' The noble ladies were hanging on every word of this dramatic tale. That concubine's daughter, completely disregarding the public spectacle and her dignity, began shrieking, 'Zhao Feng, I am your wife. What did you promise me before? You said I would become crown princess and our child would be the future heir. Now I discover that behind my back, you already had a wife and son. If you bring them into the Eastern Palace, I will take our unborn child and throw myself into the lake to die before your eyes.' With that threat, she actually lunged at the crown prince in a violent rage. The crown prince, his own anger finally breaking, struck her hard across the face, sending her sprawling to the ground. He shouted, 'You are being absolutely outrageous. I am the crown prince of this kingdom, and you are nothing but a lowly, nameless concubine without even family backing. How dare you question my decisions or make demands of me? It seems my previous kindness has led you to forget your place and overstep your bound.' He then commanded his guards, 'Take this woman back to the Eastern Palace immediately and confine her to her chambers. She is not permitted to leave without my explicit orders.' The guards stepped forward and dragged that concubine's daughter away while she screamed and struggled. Meanwhile, the crown prince gently took little Rui into his arms, and brought both the child and Yun Yang back to the Eastern Palace with him, installing them in comfortable quarters. The ladies all shook their heads at this scandalous turn of events. In the days that followed, I was thoroughly occupied with wedding preparations and had not paid particular attention to these palace dramas. Only later did I discover that the stories had spread throughout the entire capital, becoming the favorite subject of gossip at every social gathering. Once the other guests had departed from our engagement banquet, General Wei Chen lingered behind to speak with me privately. He moved closer, his expression showing barely concealed satisfaction. "The crown prince and that concubine's daughter dared to conspire against you and attempt to destroy your reputation. I have taken it upon myself to avenge you properly." Noticing his rather smug demeanor and recalling Lady Song's earlier detailed account, I asked with growing suspicion, "Was it you who arranged for that woman Yun Yang and her child to confront the crown prince so publicly?" General Wei Chen replied with a cold, satisfied chuckle. "I merely had some trusted people investigate the crown prince's past activities and movements. They uncovered that he had indeed married another woman during his travels in Jiangnan years ago, and that he had fathered a child with her. I simply informed that abandoned woman of the true situation and her husband's current location and status. Quite coincidentally, a merchant caravan was already planning to travel to the capital, so I arranged for them to bring mother and child here. They arrived somewhat sooner than I had originally expected, which worked out even more perfectly. I couldn't help but laugh at the image of the chaos this must have created. The Eastern Palace would soon be filled with drama and conflict. General Wei Chen joined in my laughter. The Crown Prince has consistently made terrible blunders in handling important court affairs and state business. Now his domestic life is a complete chaotic mess as well. He has no legitimate wife of proper standing, but instead has accumulated an abundance of problematic women fighting amongst themselves. He continued thoughtfully, moreover, I hear that Prince Jing is scheduled to return to the capital within the next month. He has recently married Princess Qing Hui, the accomplished daughter of the Duke of Ruyang. Prince Jing is currently at the height of his popularity and influence, which poses a serious threat to the Crown Prince's position. If circumstances continue developing as they currently are, the Crown Prince's hold on his position as heir may be far from secure. He took my hand gently. You are my wife now, and I will protect you from all harm. From this day forward, you need not concern yourself with any of those palace intrigues. Simply relax and enjoy watching the spectacle unfold from a safe distance. We exchanged knowing smiles, both understanding that the Eastern Palace would know no peace or tranquility for quite some time. Indeed, news of the Crown Prince's secret marriage to a commoner and the existence of his previously unknown child spread rapidly through the inner palace. When the Emperor learned of this scandal, his fury was absolutely explosive. The Empress knelt in supplication before him for an entire day and night, but the Emperor remained completely unmoved. He angrily scattered a pile of official memorials across the floor, shouting, "A mother's excessive indulgence breeds a wayward, useless son. Look at what he has become." For the sake of a lowly woman with no background or standing, he conspired to destroy and displace the properly betrothed Crown Princess, the legitimate daughter of the Grand Chancellor. He arranged to nullify that honorable engagement through shameful means. Now he is exposed for having secretly married a commoner years ago and fathering an illegitimate child. Tell me, does he have any sense of shame left whatsoever? Does he not remember that he has a mother and father who raised him? The Crown Prince, struck hard by one of the heavy memorials the Emperor had thrown, bled from a cut on his forehead. He replied quietly, trying a different approach, "Father, little Rui is your eldest legitimate grandson." The Emperor clutched his chest, breathing heavily with rage. "I have no interest in bastard grandchildren. Get out of my sight. Go kneel outside in the courtyard until I summon you." Just as the Crown Prince was beginning to rise shakily to his feet, a palace eunuch rushed in, panting desperately. "Your Majesty, there is terrible trouble. A report has just arrived from the Eastern Palace. The concubine and the new arrival have engaged in a violent confrontation, and the young prince has been pushed into the Lotus pond. The physician fears the worst for his survival. The Crown Prince must return immediately." The Crown Prince rushed back to the Eastern Palace as quickly as possible, only to find complete chaos and disorder. Yun Yang was weeping uncontrollably, cradling little Rui's pale, limp body upon the bed. The elderly physician stood nearby, shaking his head gravely as he administered acupuncture needles with little hope. The physician explained sadly, "The child's constitution has always been weak and frail. The shock of the cold pond water has severely damaged his already fragile health. Whether he survives now is entirely in the hands of fate." Upon careful inquiry, the Crown Prince learned the full story of what had transpired. The two women had engaged in a vicious quarrel driven by jealousy and rivalry. Yun Yang had asserted loudly that little Rui was the Crown Prince's legitimate firstborn heir and thus held the superior claim to inheritance. But that nameless concubine had insisted that her own unborn child was the true royal bloodline that mattered. The concubine, absolutely seething with rage, had retorted viciously, "You are nothing but a common songstress from a brothel. How dare you presume to compete with me? My child carries the blood of both the royal family and the formerly prestigious Lin clan. That makes my child far superior to your illegitimate spawn. Who even knows if little Rui is truly legitimate? Royal bloodlines cannot be muddled or contaminated, especially given your extremely low status. Why else would Her Majesty the Empress refuse to even grant you a single audience after you have been here for 2 full days? It is simply because she has no intention of acknowledging either you or your questionable child. She had continued her vicious tirade. You should take your little bastard and leave the Eastern Palace immediately, before you embarrass yourself further. With those cruel words, she had deliberately shoved little Rui hard. The small child had stumbled backward and fallen directly into the lotus pond. By the time servants pulled him from the water, he was barely clinging to life. The following day, before dawn could even break across the sky, anguished wailing echoed throughout the Eastern Palace. My Rui. My precious son. Little Rui could not be saved. He had lingered throughout the long night, struggling for each breath, but ultimately succumbed to his illness and injuries as the sun began to rise. Yun Yang clutched her dead child's body, weeping utterly inconsolably in the Crown Prince's embrace. Husband, you must avenge our innocent son. You must make her pay for this. The Crown Prince tried to console her, though his own face was grey with grief. Do not worry. I have already confined her to her chambers. I will not allow her freedom. Yun Yang cried harder. But our precious child is dead. Our son is gone forever. Merely confining her is nowhere near sufficient punishment. I want her to pay with her own life. The Crown Prince sighed heavily. Do not act rashly or in haste. She is still carrying my child. Little Rui is gone, and I cannot allow anything to happen to the child she bears. That would leave me with no heir at all. Yun Yang murmured to herself, her voice hollow and broken, my Rui is gone, dead and cold, and yet she still hopes to bear a living child. I think not. Before long, shocking news spread that the confined concubine had suffered excruciating abdominal pains after consuming medicinal soup brought from the kitchen. She had tragically miscarried, losing the child completely. In her overwhelming distress and rage, the concubine wept and wailed loudly, attracting attention throughout the palace. This dramatic incident prompted the Crown Prince to order a thorough investigation into the circumstances. The investigation quickly revealed that Yun Yang had secretly administered a powerful abortifacient poison into the medicinal soup. Observing the absolutely furious Crown Prince confronting her, Yun Yang remained remarkably calm. She asked coldly, "What is it? Does the Crown Prince now wish to take my life in recompense for hers?" She paused, then continued bitterly. "She murdered my innocent child. Is it not perfectly just that one life should be exchanged for another life? That is fair justice." The Crown Prince's face turned deathly pale as he collapsed weakly to the ground, completely defeated. Within the span of a single fortnight, both children who had resided in the Eastern Palace had perished tragically. The Crown Prince's dream of heirs and succession was in ruins. Yet before he could dwell in his overwhelming sorrow for very long, a new disaster struck during the Grand Court Assembly. An official stepped forward and presented a detailed petition directly to the Emperor, formally accusing the Crown Prince of accepting substantial bribes during his official inspection tour through Jiangnan several years prior. The petition revealed that the Crown Prince had been directly involved in the illegal sale of official government positions, collecting money from wealthy merchants and unqualified candidates. The memorial included meticulous financial records documenting that a total sum of 500,000 taels of silver had been collected through these corrupt transactions. The evidence presented was absolutely irrefutable and damning. The Emperor's fury exploded beyond all measure. Zhao Feng. As Crown Prince and heir to this throne, how could you possibly engage in such fundamentally corrupt and treacherous acts that undermine the very foundation of our state and government? You have brought me immeasurable disappointment and shame. The Crown Prince was immediately confined to the Eastern Palace under guard. After 2 weeks of investigation and deliberation, an official imperial edict was issued to formally depose him from his position. The Emperor proclaimed to the entire kingdom, "The Crown Prince's conduct has been consistently unbecoming of his station. His virtue and character are fundamentally unworthy of the position of heir to the throne. Thus, his designation as Crown Prince is hereby permanently revoked. He is banished to the remote region of Qingju, and he is strictly forbidden to return to the capital without explicit imperial summons. Accompanied only by his 2 concubines and whatever meager belongings they could hastily pack, the former crown prince departed on his journey of exile. As fate would have it, that very same day happened to be my wedding day. His plain exile carriage passed directly by my elaborate bridal sedan procession on the main road leading out of the capital. As he lifted the curtain of his simple carriage, he caught a distant glimpse of the large character Lin displayed prominently on the wedding banners in my magnificent procession. He stared with bitter intensity at my covered bridal sedan, then cast a fierce, hate-filled glance at the trembling concubine huddled in the corner of his carriage. He said viciously, "Wretched woman, had it not been for your shameless seduction and manipulation, my rightful wife would be Shu Yi. The Grand Chancellor would not have turned against me and withdrawn all his political support. This entire disaster is completely your fault." The former concubine sat silently in her corner, too terrified to offer any response or defense. Her very life and death now rested entirely in the hands of this fallen prince. Even as a deposed heir, he remained the emperor's son by blood. To end her life would be as effortless for him as crushing a small insect. Sitting in my bridal sedan, I listened to my maid's whispered account of this encounter. I observed that the road ahead was being led by General Wei Chen on his magnificent horse. I suspected he had deliberately directed our wedding procession down this particular route to ensure this final confrontation would occur. However, all of that belonged to the past now. The Lin family had successfully distanced ourselves from the dangerous contest for succession and imperial favor. I had chosen to marry a talented, honorable, and genuinely good man. From this moment forward, living well and happily was my only priority and concern. And so ends this tale of palace intrigue, schemes, and ultimate triumph. If you enjoyed this tale of revenge and justice, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell here on Lotus Tale Studios. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Would you have handled the situation differently? What was your favorite moment of clever scheming? Join me for more captivating stories of drama, romance, and intrigue. Until next time, may your own life be filled with happiness and free from treacherous crown princes.